Jem, I've brought the good tidings for yourself and also for your kin.
Oh, really?
Yes, here they are. They're quite heavy. Can you please take them? These good tidings, my goodness.
If they're for my kin, does that include you as well?
Of course, I'll take half of those back. Good tidings to me and my kin and your kin, which is me. What?
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
G'day and welcome to episode 87 of the Gaming Lovers Podcast. I'm Jem.
I'm Brendo. 'Tis the season, they say. And hey, if you're anything like a normal human worker, you may have time off this time of year. I normally do not. I am a train driver by trade, and yes, they do have to operate every day. But huzzah, I happen to have some days off all in a row at the end of the year. I feel like a normal human for a change.
Woohoo!
A normal human.
Huzzah for being normal-ish.
And I was so excited to spend 11 days playing video games, but that is not going to happen. That is
No.
definitely not going to happen this time of year.
Christmas and all the holidays around it, New Year's Eve especially being so close as well. Yeah, this is a crazy busy week. It's never a quiet week.
That's right.
It's a time when family, at least for us, has a giant list of things that they want to do with you.
That's
So-
right. A tight-knit family does mean lots of social gatherings.
Yes.
Thankfully, I like the in-laws. So that's a little plus.
Mm-hmm.
This episode, we're going to be talking about a little reflection over the past 10 years, because this is not only towards the end of 2019, we're approaching the end of a decade.
Yes, we are. I'm feeling old.
And sadly, this episode will be in memoriam to GameRankings.com, one of the staples of my video game research over the years, over the decades even.
Yep.
Oh, GameRankings.com is now dead and buried. It has basically been eaten by, some would say, the superior Metacritic. But I always had a soft spot for GameRankings.com. So we're going to be having a look later on in this episode, the top 10 games of 2010 to 2019, according to GameRankings.com, which
Yep.
you can't visit anymore, so you'll have to take our word for it that it's accurate.
There's usually places that back up old websites. So maybe it's been
Archived
archived. I don't know.
next to the DOS games.
Possibly. You can even look up old sites like Ask Jeeves. Do you remember that?
Oh, I was more of an Alta Vista man myself.
Oh, boo. Everyone knows asking a
Ah,
digital
boo.
asking a digital butler is way better.
Especially when he shows up in Ready Player One, presumably.
Kind of a
gotta
bit
be
like that.
Jeeves.
It's a bit of a hint towards that anyway. Before we get to the best games of this past decade, at least according to GameRankings.com. So now,
Before we get there, it's my favourite segment. And this is not just give me any ordinary segment of the Gaming Lovers podcast. Let's put a little festive seasoning on it.
delicious seasoning.
'Tis the seasoning.
Now it's time to say
The games that we have played.
this segment here is Gaming Goals.
So let's all say hooray. Oh, gaming goals, gaming goals, gaming is such fun. What have we played on the PS4, the Switch, and Xbox One? Hey! Gaming goals!
We're such dorks.
Yes, we are. We do love Christmas, though.
Yeah.
It's fun. Mm-hmm. And hopefully I get a present this time that has a game in it. Unlike last year.
We'll have to
Oh.
wait and see.
Starved for games last year.
Cry me a river. You still have backlog from previous Christmases that have never been played. So maybe you finish those first and then you can get some new games.
There is no famine when it comes to my Christmas hauls. It is all feast.
Yes.
It is Christmas feast. Gaming goals. Shall I begin quickly?
Quickly.
With the
Is that possible?
8 games that I've been playing this week. Bit
How
less
about you
than that.
do like the first chunk of your gaming goals and then I'll inject mine and then you can finish off with more of your gaming goals.
No problem. Well, I had the task set last week by my darling wife that if I wanted to play Jedi Fallen Order, which I do, and is in our house because Lady Nat beat it and lent it to us.
Yes, it's sitting there taunting us.
You declared that I had to beat Greedfall before I started that, and since we did just go and see Star Wars Episode 9, let's just say the Force is strong with the gaming lovers at the moment.
Yes.
Star Wars fever has taken over.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I've been lied to. My wife is deceitful. She said to me last week that I was at the end game of Greedfall's main story, and after about another 15 hours, it's still going. It just never ends.
It's just like the end game in Trails of Cold Steel, you know?
A very early running joke of this podcast
Yep.
where Jem tried to beat Trails of Cold Steel 2
Oh my goodness.
every week for about 3 months, and it just never arrived.
Yep. Oh man, did that ending drag.
Greedfall, we've both talked a lot of Greedfall this year, but I will just quickly say the story, you were right.
Ha!
It
Say that
is-
again. Say that again.
You were right.
Thank you.
Greedfall's story has picked up. It is good. The characters, I actually know who's who. Not just Dunkas, but others as well. And I am enjoying it. The character missions I've got towards the end, your party members' missions, very good stuff. The side missions towards the end of the game are better than most of the main missions and sometimes give even a little bit more information than the main missions give you about really important things.
Yep.
Really important things.
Yeah, if you rush through and you don't do those side missions, you can miss some pretty crucial information about the game.
So I'm glad I did not rush through this game because my enjoyment of it has gone up as a result of the amount of time I've put into this game, and that's what you want. Now, I don't think it's anywhere near a fantastic game. It has its flaws, which some of them are just niggles. Some of them are hilarious. There was one NPC who said he hasn't touched a bottle in years and immediately grabbed a bottle out and drank. So I'm like, well, that's not right. Another one, there's 2 main storyline quests that happen at the same time. Concurrently, you can do either one to progress them both. And I did one main thing to get somebody some relief from some pain. And then the next conversation I had to them, my character said, "Oh, is it true that you've been in pain recently?" I'm like, well, that's not helpful.
Maybe the game was expecting you to do it in a different order.
I guess so.
That's the danger of being able to pick and choose when you do stuff, especially if they're trying to have certain things be a little linear while allowing freedom of choice in other areas. You know, it can ruin whatever the writers and developers have planned.
Yes, and thankfully not to a game-breaking degree. I have read online there are certain combinations of quests. If you do them in the wrong order, you might screw yourself out of finishing the game, maybe? I don't know.
Wow.
Hopefully that has been patched. Party members, I couldn't give you a straight answer a few weeks ago as to who is the best.
Yeah. And
I
now?
have my top tier. And I have my second tier, which is still good, just not as good. Top tier, Afra,
Yeah.
who I don't think I've ever had any feelings of, you're such a jerk, I hate you, unless they were sort of like the friendly jerk, which reminds me of you and I. She may have been romanced.
Okay.
Petrus, surprisingly, my number 2.
He's an interesting character.
I quite like him, and his cool voice gives him an extra tick as well. And Kurt. Good old boring Kurt, who I thought was not exciting at the start of the game, is a very good character
Yes.
now. Very good character.
That is, I think, a key example of good character development. There's so much I want to say, but it was huge spoilers, so I won't. But his character, there's so much more to him. Like, he keeps up a very big wall for a lot of the early game because his job is just to be your bodyguard, really.
Yes,
and so he doesn't want to get too attached. And when he finally does let his guard down, if you do build up that proper relationship, then it gets so interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The second tier is the remaining characters. Siora, who was my favourite character out of the teammates early on, I don't know, just nothing.
Fizzled out?
Yeah, fizzled. Fizzled a bit. Vasco, he's all right, but
I liked Vasco.
he's all right. And is that it?
Yep, just 5.
Okay, good. I was thinking, is there a 6th one? I've
There is
forgotten about?
one companion for each faction
Yes.
on the island.
And frustratingly, there's 6 main talents you have, and having one of them as friendly boosts one of them, except for the one that I wanted to boost, which was lockpicking. So thanks, guys. Just you couldn't have helped out a little bit with some tumblers or something? Goodness. But Greedfall, hopefully, I'll be done with that next week. Hopefully, I'll have my backlog cleared by Christmas. Nah, it's not going to happen. Never going to happen. But Greedfall's getting a solid thumbs up from me at the moment.
Nice.
And, yeah, I will happily give the floor to you now because you had a very similar task
Yes.
with a very similar goal and a very similar reward.
Yes, because we both want to play Jedi Fallen Order. It's the race to the game. I also really want to play The Outer Worlds. I'm very torn at the moment as to which I do want to start. I'm itching to play both. But my challenge was to finish and get the credits rolling on Pokemon. We've got Shield, so there's the Sword and Shield combo. And we have Shield. And last I reported, I think I had just finished all the gyms.
Mm-hmm.
There is a fair bit of like tournament kind of style combat after that to get to be the champion. And then part of that gets a little interrupted. And then I have to save the world because, of course, that's the job of, a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. That makes sense.
Of course. Why wouldn't you send the 10-year-olds to go take care of the big earth-threatening monster?
Here's this huge legendary Pokemon that the adults can't fight, but let's send kids up there, sure. Yep. Anyways, games and movies like that always crack me up. But yes, I've officially become the champion of the Galar region.
You defeated the undefeatable Leon.
Yes.
How was he in combat?
Tricky, actually, because he does have a very well-rounded team. Fair few, dragon types, but there's others that are kind of mixed. So you really have to have high-level Pokemon because he can one-shot you a lot of times, which he did very early on. It had me sweating. I'm like, oh, no.
It also had you another word that sounds like sweating, but the T is changed for a different letter as well. So...
Yeah. So that's done. Credits have rolled. I have officially finished my first ever Pokemon game from, opening to close. And obviously there's tons of stuff I could still do if I wanted to. I played for about 5 minutes afterwards to get the Master Ball and maybe catch a legendary. I'm pretty sure you can catch the main ones that are always on the covers of these games. So if the mood strikes me, I might go back in and do that. But I'm just happy to have completed it, and I can move on.
Well, first of all, a legitimate congratulations. There's
you.
no snarkiness involved here. This is an honest-to-goodness applause and congratulations because you have never beaten a Pokemon mainline game, start to finish, become champion, and you set that goal. Or one of us may have set that goal for you. But the fact that you have stuck with it and you did enjoy the experience, I am pleased at your progress.
I probably could have done it faster. There were just some days I'm like, I'm really not in the mood to play this. And I wanted to play something else. But I'm like, no, I'm not allowed to. I'll go watch Netflix.
That's not exactly why we set these gaming goals, so you can avoid them, so you can enjoy different games.
No, but when you put a ban on playing anything else, and I knew that if I did start, I would really not care about finishing Pokemon. So I was strict on myself, and I binge watched a lot of shows instead.
Well, I'm sorry for being a harsh taskmaster. The other thing I wanted to say, a lot of people who play Pokemon more seriously will save their Master Ball, particularly if a
For a Magikarp?
shiny... No, well, maybe. If a shiny shows up that can either run away or self-destruct, the Master Ball straight out of the gates is great. Also, you run the risk of accidentally killing a shiny, which means bye-bye to the shiny. So... that is just something to keep in mind.
So shiny.
Or you could catch a Wooloo with it and just make it really special.
I remember there was a meme of a guy that had all these legendaries like Mewtwo and Zapdos and stuff like that in his thing, and they were all caught with just normal, the base Pokeball, and then a Magikarp in the Master Ball. It's really funny.
Very good stuff.
Alrighty. You have done a lot more gaming than me this week.
I have dabbled with some other side projects just because I wasn't allowed to start something brand new like a Jedi Fallen Order. doesn't mean I only exclusively played Greedfall.
So what else did you dabble with?
Well, myself, I went and caught up with my good buddy the Falcon this week. At long last, long last, this was a project that I was originally going to do in October. Mm-hmm. It's the end of December at the moment. So it took a little longer than expected to get together with him. The Falcon, recent owner of a PSVR and was a little loose with the wallet on the PlayStation Store, probably has legitimately about 20 PSVR games. And so I was excited to give the PSVR another whirl. We've only tried it once together. Mm-hmm. We had that featured on this podcast.
Yep.
Including in-depth descriptions of what the motion sickness did to us.
Yes.
But this time I played it a lot more sensible. We did shorter sessions, switched in and out. I didn't keep running myself into the ground like I did last time. We started with me giving Until Dawn Rush of Blood a go, which sounds just a perfect game for Jem.
No.
Imagine an on-rail shooter in a roller coaster in like a ghost train thing with jump scares and clowns trying to slap you with axes.
No, thank you.
And the occasional ghosty.
I just have my eyes shut the entire time, like I would on a real ghost train.
So I was sitting on a normal little office seat in the middle of the Falcon's lounge room with the PSVR gear on, and it was pretty terrifying because you know how immersive that headset gets. You're completely blind
And
to
when
the
you get the
outside world.
Headphones on, the surround sound headphones, like that just really shuts you off from the world.
I had headphones on and I would hear a noise behind me and I'd turn around and there wouldn't be anything there and I'd turn back around and a clown would attack me. And that happened multiple times and I was getting more and more on edge till I realised what the problem was. The Falcon put the headphones on me backwards, so I was hearing sounds from the wrong direction. So I was turning with my guns to the right, hearing a noise on the right, and the attack was coming from the left, which adds more jump scare and more fear.
That's kind of funny. I imagine there's going to be like a Five Nights at Freddy's VR.
It probably already is, for sure.
Yeah, there probably is. I don't know, because I don't look up that kind of stuff, but no thank you.
Now, surprisingly, the roller coaster aspect didn't make me nauseous as much as I thought it would. It legitimately felt like I was moving on a stationary seat, which freaked me out so bad. I did quite well, though. Got A ranks on the 2 missions I did.
Nice. Even with the sound from the wrong direction?
Even with the sound of the wrong direction of the first one. The way I figured it out, I had the 2 guns with the PlayStation Move remotes.
Yep.
I put it next to my head, pointed at the sky, and shot the trigger. And could hear the gunshot in the opposite ear. So that's how I figured out what was going wrong. Thanks, Falcon. That was good fun. Don't forget, 20 games. We were going to sample a lot of things. I only got as far as the next game before I pulled the pin and said I can't do this anymore. So it was not as successful a session as I'd hoped. There's an action, spy, thriller, secret agent style called Blood and Truth, and it was fantastic. But you move from cover to cover by selecting it and pushing a button, and your screen sort of floats towards it, movement-wise. Anytime there's movement and you're not actually moving, that's what gets me. That is what gets me. So the actual taking cover and shooting was fun, and you do things like lock-picking, and you actually have to put your guns in their holsters and pick up the little tools and jiggle them into the lock and things like that. If you're trying to disarm a bomb, you have to use little pliers and try to snip them. You can pull a thumbs up, a middle finger, basically a 2 sweet, or a peace sign at any time you want. So when there was a prisoner who was tied up, I immediately went the peace sign and tried to stick my fingers up his nose, which was hilarious. Good fun. It was very good fun. It's just I didn't get a bit of nausea started to settle in.
Yep.
Reloading in particular is pretty darn cool with that game because you have the gun and your pistol in your right hand, for example.
Yep.
If you reach with your left controller towards your chest and push the trigger, you'll pull out a clip from your vest and then you slap it into the bottom of your gun and it reloads. And that is just so cool. Those little movements and using the little tools and things made that an enjoyable little session. But then I got ill. And after a measly 2 mini-games, 2 10-minute sessions, I was done. The Falcon has built up a lot more tolerance for the VR. He is playing No Man's Sky and flying his spaceship 360 degrees and landing it and Oh my goodness, I was getting sick just watching him play that on the TV. So, you can build up the tolerance because he used to get the sickness as well. But sadly, VR was not going as smoothly as I had hoped. Ugh. It's not what we want.
No.
Head nausea is much worse than stomach nausea, I think.
I don't know.
Or then again, the week I had last week, or the other week, not the best.
Aside from PlayStation VR and Greedfall, is there anything else that you have completed or at least dabbled in this week?
Nowhere near completed. Just 2 quick little comments about some games I have been playing. 1, PS Vita, back on the menu. Delicious little PS Vita. Playing Yeast 4, Memories of Celceta.
Yes.
That RPG is getting really good.
Nice.
The combat is fantastic. The story, which I thought was completely absent basically from the start, but combat was so enjoyable it was worth playing. Now the story and the characters and the greater mystery is getting pretty darn good. So it's a sort of a game that I think Jem would enjoy, but there's plenty of fish in the sea, in the gaming sea. And apart from that, I have also been dabbling with something that was just an impulse play. Resident Evil 4 HD from the Xbox Game Pass, $0 down. It's in my subscription, a game I haven't played since the GameCube. And I've been about an hour or 2 into that, and I've enjoyed revisiting a game that I didn't like originally.
There you go.
More details on that in a future episode. I've talked enough about gaming goals. Greedfall not complete. That's all you really have to know.
Guess who gets to play Star Wars? Bye. Oh, wait, we still have the rest of the
Don't
episode
go
to do.
anywhere. We still have a podcast body to talk about.
We're going to be talking about the best games of the decade, according to GameRankings.com, after this.
Rest in peace.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at Brendo Jem. That's BrendoJem.
What a decade it has been.
10 years, actually, this one. This decade, 10 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Who'd have thunk? But in all seriousness, as far as gaming is concerned, I think we've had some of the best titles released in the past 10 years. We had a bit of, I guess, a gaming golden era back in the 90s. But now we've had, I think, maybe another renaissance as far as just incredible story-driven games, new records being broken, esports industry kind of basically being this huge juggernaut that it is. It's been an incredible decade.
The whole gaming scene has changed quite a bit in 10 years. But the best part is classic games are great. Modern games are great.
They're all great.
They can be great for different reasons. But as you said, there's been some fantastic games out in the past 10 years.
Absolutely.
And there has never been more games as well. Never been more game developers, with indie developers making indie games just out of nowhere sometimes, and big companies working on multiple projects at a time. There can be a lot of shovelware that comes along with that great quantity, but there is also some great quality. And speaking of quality, one of my favourite websites of all time is now dead.
Rest in peace.
I was always a GameFAQs.com guy. The year of 2003, when I was in TAFE, I actually failed out of my class because I spent too much time on the poll of the day message board and made quite a name for myself there.
And at Chadstone.
And at Chadstone. I spent a bit of time at Chadstone, that's right.
You know, nothing like wasting your hours at a shopping centre, going to the movies when you should be,
Attending classes?
Yeah, studying, that sort of thing.
May have made a few mistakes there, but it's all right. I recovered nicely in life. GameFAQs got eaten up by GameSpot, which is hilarious because the owner of GameFAQs said that would never happen. It was quoted as such. And one of their sister sites, GameRankings.com, an aggregate average score of critical reviews for video games. I like to look at average reviews. Because that way no individual bias affects the score.
Yeah.
You might have some that are higher, some that are lower, but if you get an average review score, that's what I like to look at.
Yep.
There's a game I know I'm going to play, I'll look at no trailers, I'll look at no footage, no screenshots. I will just look at the average review score when it launches, and that'll help me decide whether to pull the trigger on it or not. Now, GameRankings.com, past 10 years, we're going to give them one last hurrah before they ride off into the grave, I guess. It's not the sunset because they're already gone.
Maybe the digital archives. Sounds
They
less
ride
gloomy.
off to the digital archives. That sounds wonderful. Where all the other websites go that never get their subscriptions renewed by their owners.
All right, let's start with number 10. We'll work our way up to the number 1 video game of the decade. So in at number 10, with a score of 95.15%, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, which came out in 2011.
A game that I have put a great many hours in. We're talking hundreds. Well over 100, that's for sure. Maybe 150 to 200, somewhere in that range. Never beat the main story.
I don't know if anyone has, really. It's a huge game. It's the game that everyone joked that if you did get stranded on a desert island but had power and could play the game, that's the game you take because it's just so huge.
Mm-hmm. I have played through 2 rather large playthroughs of this game, and there's just so much side stuff to do that I lost interest in the main story, and then by the time I'd had enough of the game, I don't know where the main storyline goes. I might have to watch a Games Done Quick viewpoint of it and just see what happens at the end, because I don't know.
If you get your tolerance up for VR, you could always go back and play it in virtual reality, and then that opening scene of you getting beheaded will really feel realistic.
That's terrifying. I don't want that.
Doesn't sound like fun?
No.
Put your head on the block
It's horrific.
after seeing someone else get theirs chopped off?
Oh, goodness. Now, you did start Skyrim as
I
well,
did.
didn't you?
I got further in that one than I did with, what was it? It wasn't Morrowind. Oblivion. Stupid giant rats.
Not a fan of the big rats at the start.
I am much better with video games that are in third person. So, look, Fallout 4 was probably the biggest shift for me as far as adjusting to first person. Like, that really shocked you when I got into that. So, over the years, I've been adjusting and trying to enjoy more games because then it opens up so many more options. But I still prefer third person.
Oh, for sure.
So those older games, yeah, you get startled so much more easily in first. Things come out of nowhere because you don't have quite the same peripheral vision that you do when you're in third.
Now, what shocks me about this is the fact that Skyrim did come out in 2011,
Yeah.
which means it has been 8 years since we've had a proper Elder Scrolls mainline single-player entry, which is on the horizon.
They're working on it, so hopefully it'll come out soon. But Skyrim has had so much life and so many reiterations and relaunches and extra DLC to the point where they had that joke trailer about having Skyrim on your fridge.
On Google Alexa, whatever it was. That was pretty funny.
Yes.
Do you agree that Skyrim deserves its place at one of the top 10 games of this past decade?
Yep, I would say so. It's still relevant today, given how long it's been out. It was a cultural phenomenon. It was a huge success when it launched. So, yes, absolutely.
Now, just to illustrate how close this list is, Skyrim, 95.15%.
Yes.
Number 9, 95.16%. A mere 100th of a percentile point to pip it. 2011 again, Portal 2 takes number 9 spot on this list.
I love that game. So fun.
This is the perfect illustration where you have a great idea for a great game and it is executed so well, basically you just want more. You want a bigger version of that. You want a few more dynamics thrown in there. It's exactly what they did with Portal 2 in 2011.
And they gave us co-op as like an optional extra. It wasn't part of the main campaign, but it was still a fun little side thing that you could do with a mate doing local co-op. So we had fun doing that until I got nauseous because it's first person and some of those puzzles really... Oh my word, they do a number on your eyes.
That is not a game you would want to try in first-person VR.
No.
That is for certain.
No.
Now, with Portal, it was a fun little 3-hour game. You could experience it all that it had to offer. It teased your brain a little bit. Had some great character from GLaDOS, one of the best video game characters ever, particularly in the realm of the antagonist.
Yes.
How on earth can they outdo that when you have a sinister, cold, calculating villain like GLaDOS?
Potato GLaDOS.
Let's put GLaDOS in a potato. Let's make the new antagonist a bumbling idiot with so much charm. Good old Wheatley.
Stephen Merchant. Mwah, brilliant.
One of the best performances in video game history. I played through Portal 2 one time. And I haven't... Oh, I do own it on PC. I forgot to mention that. And I played through this when I rented it. And I immediately had to rent it again because I never beat it in that same session because it was a bit longer than the first one, that's for sure.
Yep.
But you get more history about Aperture Science, about its CEO, about his secretary. It's fantastic. There's actual real plot. There is real puzzles. And there is real comedy. And a great finale. Portal 2 barely puts a step wrong. And I think the review scores reflect that.
Totally.
As one of the best games in the past 10 years.
Absolutely. In at number 8 at 95.70%. Out in 2014, The Last of Us Remastered. Interesting how it's the remastered and not the original.
The Last of Us, barely a few percentage points beneath it at almost an even 95%. So all of these games, 95 and above. But we're not going to put it in twice.
Yeah.
It's the remastered version. It reviewed higher than the original, even though it came out a scarce few years later. Not even years. Singular.
Yeah.
The Last of Us, 2013. The Last of Us Remastered, 2014.
Yeah. Out with the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, that's right. The original out at the tail end of the PlayStation 3's lifespan. PlayStation 4 begins its reign and The Last of Us gets adapted across. And I double dipped. And I have no objections to double dipping with that because I enjoyed both variants of that game.
Was there much difference?
One looked a little nicer and had the DLC included.
There you go. The Last of Us, I think, regardless of whether it's remastered or not, most people would put it on this list of best games of the decade.
And we have talked about our favourite developers in an episode called Developers. Easy to find, trust me, that one's easy to find. Naughty Dog what's the last game they mucked up?
Have they mucked up a game? I don't know.
Not sure. But The Last of Us, now this is a sort of game, PlayStation exclusive. So people who, for some reason, have to pledge allegiance to single consoles, if you're not in the PlayStation camp, they think it's the most boring, stupid, uninspired, crap game that there is. Because it's The Last of Us. It's not even any good. But if you're a PlayStation fanboy, it's the best game ever. And everyone else who thinks otherwise sucks. So, as completely unbiased people here on the Gaming Lovers podcast, we love all games from all
consoles.
All consoles, all brands. I think I can say with a clear conscience that The Last of Us is one of the best games that I have ever played.
Has you crying in like the first 10 minutes. It is a powerful story. I think it's the kind of game that even if you weren't a big gamer or your partner isn't, they would happily sit and watch you play.
Yes.
You know, same with when you first went through the Uncharted trilogy, I happily sat next to you, just enjoyed watching it until you got stuck in a really repetitive combat sequence and kept dying.
Or if I tried to show off with my amazing, look how dramatic I'm making this fight. Oh, I just fell off a cliff. Never mind. The Last of Us, much more grounded in its combat, much less bombastic than Uncharted, but still absolutely nails atmosphere, characters. I mean, the performances alone give this game a shining halo in the realm of the video game holiness. I don't even know where that analogy was going.
Yeah, they bring a lot of gravitas to it.
This was the era when I started to notice, who is this Troy Baker? He keeps showing up everywhere. Oh, who voices Joel in The Last of Us? Oh my gosh, it's Troy Baker! Again, he's everywhere. And myself and the good buddy the Falcon did play through The Last of Us Remastered on the PS4 on grounded difficulty. One of our most proud achievements And we had multiple 3-hour sessions where we made no progress because it was that darn hard. But yes, definitely. I think I can honestly say it deserves to be up there. Number 8 on the top 10 games of the decade, according to GameRankings.com.
And some of the funniest behind-the-scenes footage, if you haven't already seen it, go check it out on YouTube, of the prank that the director pulled on Troy Baker, basically throwing him into a musical scene. And he rolled with it, and it's hilarious and so worth watching.
Very good, very good. The Last of Us also has quite an enjoyable multiplayer aspect. Fireflies, not the Firefly Funhouse, which was the first thing that went into my head. That is not The Last of Us, but just as creepy.
Yes.
Much more.
All right, you're rabbit trailing.
Sorry, you just want to move on to number 7.
I do.
Okay, well, take the floor.
Okay, this should be no surprise that this for me is personally much higher up on the list. But officially on GameRankings.com, number 7 in at 95.77%, Mass Effect 2, baby.
That's right.
Yeah.
2010 launch, so it just squeaked into this decade.
Yes.
But BioWare hitting full steam ahead at this point in their development. Quite the difference to the end of the decade, let's put it that way.
Oh, don't say that.
Focus on the positives, my dear.
Yes. Now, the Mass Effect trilogy as a whole has helped basically shape and define Western RPGs. So many other games have borrowed mechanics from these games and adapted to their own, like the dialogue circle is very, very common to find now.
Whether you're playing Horizon Zero Dawn or Alpha Protocol had a very similar dialogue wheel. These sort of games inspired by Mass Effect.
Absolutely. I think another thing, though, that has made this game stand out amongst the trilogy is the payoff with the endings. You know, the fact that you could die and get a really terrible ending and poor Joker is left as the lone survivor, or you could save everybody, depending on the effort that you put into the game. That's the payoff that you'll get. And then all those decisions and things impact the third game, which then gives you not such a good ending.
Oh, well, focus on the positives, my dear. Focus on the positives.
The Mass Effect 2, I think, is, I would say, pretty much across the board. Anyone that loves Mass Effect generally says that is the best in the series. And, you know, it's hard to argue with that. Because it's one of the best of the decade.
It's official, according to a website that is now deleted. So that I don't know how that holds up in court, to be honest. Mass Effect 2, personally, is my favourite Mass Effect game. I think I can say that without any hesitation. You have like 12 party members, which is well above either of its other 2 games in the mainline series.
Yep.
More than Andromeda as well. And the fact that all 12 are interesting, except for Jacob Taylor, proves that the script writing, the character development, it's there for such a wide variety of characters. All the ancillary characters as well, all the extra ones.
Yep.
The doctor of the ship, the chef, everybody on your ship is enjoyable to go talk to.
The Volus that thinks it's a biotic god. One of my favourite scenes every time. Oh, I love it so much.
Just this little puff of biotic. Good stuff. The fact that all your characters have loyalty missions is something that, again, Greedfall takes inspiration from.
Definitely.
All your party members in that have their own individual storylines.
And if you don't do it, that could be bad.
Just like in Mass Effect, where I didn't do all of them.
Oops.
And we had to go save people, so we took off to do the main final mission a bit early.
Rushing through the game means paying the consequence for that. I also loved some of the surprise factors of when you had done like a couple of missions, you know, then there's a main storyline thing that just happens unexpectedly that you get caught off guard with. Like, it's not quite the same when you replay it down the road and you know when everything's going to happen. But that first playthrough, I mean, the opening sequence and seeing your beloved Commander Shepard die, you're like, what?
In the introduction.
Yes.
Not a spoiler.
Not a
it happened
spoiler.
in the first 5
and
minutes.
they use that as a mechanic to then help you then rebuild your character. And then it gives you a logical reason to then have to start from 0 with all your skill points. So I really, really enjoyed that as an explanation as for why we're going back to 0,
That's
basically.
right. You may be starting stat-wise at 0 at the beginning of Mass Effect 2, but you are not beginning at the start of the story in Mass Effect 2 because talk about innovation. BioWare programmed Mass Effect 2 to read your finished Mass Effect 1 save.
Yep.
All your decisions, who's alive, who's dead, what solution you did on this planet, what faction won this war, they all carry over to the next game. And having that carry over just means that entire experience with the first game boosts its value.
Definitely.
You beat that game, it's not just gone forever. You have lasting impact. And then the same happens with 2 into 3. The fact that BioWare did that, and later games that they have made have done it as well. Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, which was much more complex because they had to read over various devices.
And they had to put that online as a file that you can then import. More just the key choices. It wasn't reading the video game file. It was reading what decisions you made in the Dragon Age Keep, which I helped beta test.
Very cool.
Anyways, enough bragging about that.
I would ask you who your favourite Mass Effect character is, but I already know the
Garrus.
answer is Garrus Vakarian. And why wouldn't he be?
He's awesome. I think pretty much across the board, guys and girls think he's awesome. He's a great mate for a male shepherd. He's like the best bro. And for most of us girls, not all, but for most of us, we know he is the true main choice.
That's right. He's a good mate for the men, and he's a good mate for the females.
Okay, it's getting weird. Let's move on to number 6.
Number 6, PS3. Hey, stop me if I've heard this one before. If I've heard this one. If you've heard this one. If anyone's heard this one. 2011, a good year for gaming.
Yes.
We've got another entry from 2011 at 95.94%. Just a hair's breadth underneath 96% average review score. Batman Arkham City. Phenomenal game.
Yes.
Terrible cover art, particularly when it started to get good reviews, and the biggest text on the box taking up 60% of the cover is a giant 10 out of 10 game of the year.
Yes.
Then the other 40% is Batman, his face, and you can't even see what the game's called because you just see 10 out of 10. But let that not persuade you against playing this game. Batman Arkham City, hot diggity dog, what a game.
Hot dog, diggity dog.
Now, I'll be honest, I never found that much appeal in the Caped Crusader, Mr. Batman himself,
Really?
before I played the Arkham games. I, as a child, liked Jim Carrey and therefore liked the Riddler in Batman Forever. And apart from that, pish posh. Batman Begins, okay, it's a pretty cool movie, but Batman, he's got no superpowers. He's just a man with a suit, with pointy ears and a cape, and he uses gadgets. That's not powers, that's just brains. After I played the Arkham games, I love everything Batman. These games introduced me to so many of the villains in the Batman universe. I learned about Deathstroke from Arkham City. Maybe. If he's in it. I can't remember. There's so many Arkham games. I don't know which one's which.
They're blurring over now.
Arkham Asylum was great because it was in the just asylum and its surrounding areas. But then Arkham City took you to the whole of Gotham, basically.
Yep.
Or part of it, whatever's not quarantined. And what can we say? But this sort of combat is, again, the perfect example that it has nailed what they set out to do combat-wise, and it is copied in every second game that is made now.
Totally. From things as recent as Spider-Man, you know, you see a lot of influence from those Arkham games in that, and I think that's what helped make Spider-Man such a huge success. But in a lot of real-time combat kind of games, they borrow elements of that. Of those combos and just the style and camera angles and all that coming together.
The Shadow of Mordor games.
Yes.
Perfect example. Copies almost exactly the same combat style. And the Batman Arkham games, in particular Arkham City, introduced, I think, for the first time, detective vision, where you can see through walls and sense enemies and see electrical wires for puzzles and things like that. How many games these days use that same technique, where you can sense where enemies are? If you just listen in The Last of Us, you're listening, but you can just see where an enemy is through a wall. You can see where puzzle things are using your scanner in the Resident Evil 2 remake and things like that.
Even in Persona 5, you have that moment where you focus and you can kind of see enemies kind of highlighted in red through walls.
Absolutely. Batman Arkham did it first, and Batman Arkham did it well. 2 thumbs up for me. I'll put them on top of my head so they look like little bat ears. Batman Arkham City deserves the number 6 spot.
Well, we'll find out what the top 5 games of the decade, according to GameRankings.com, are right after this.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side. And you could be featured in the next podcast.
As we go over the top 10 video games of this decade, according to the website GameRankings.com, rest in peace.
I'm not ready to move
We're
on
up to
yet.
the top 5 games. So far, have you agreed with everything on this list?
I agree that the 5 games that we have already listed in the 10 to 6 positions have been fantastic.
And worthy of top spots.
Worthy of top spots for sure.
It's kind of hard to argue given that they have collective global reviews making these, but people still do anyway.
Now, look, a lot of it's been 2010 and 2011 for this decade. Surely more recent games have been good as well.
Some have. Probably one of the most recent ones on this list. In at number 5 at 96.45%, Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yeah.
Came out
2018.
last year.
Very cool. A game I recently finished. So I should be able to answer any questions you have to ask about it.
Do the horses' anatomy look realistic?
Well, that's weird.
Because they were bragging about that people were making such a big deal with the trailers when they noticed things about the horse in the cold.
Look, the thermodynamic physics when things get cold, yes. Okay.
That's attention to detail.
And
Who thinks to put that in?
as much as I said it's weird, I did check it. So, I don't know who the weird one is. Red Dead Redemption 2, look, I had my complaints about it, but if you take a review score for a scope of a story and characters and just if there's a game that would fit a mini-series or a Netflix original run, you could make one heck of a show following Dutch Van der Linde's gang.
And then John Marsden.
Very cool.
Be heartbreaking, but it would be great.
Red Dead Redemption 2 set before the first Red Dead Redemption, and you meet characters that are dead, and some that are red, and some that are redeemed, and it's kind of cool to see, where some of them are going to end up, you just don't know what's going to send them in that direction.
Yeah.
And as far as the intergrouping relationships go, some of them don't get along well. Some are turncoats. Some are victims. Some are just die randomly. Some make it to missions and some don't make it back from missions. You don't know who's going to have something bad happen to them next. And when you care about characters, like I cared about these characters, there was one mission that 2 of my favourites did not return from. And that was heartbreaking, and I had to have a break from the game for a week.
Aww.
So it's pretty darn good. And the fact that you can play poker for high stakes like 25 cents. I mean, I'm there. Let's put it that way.
And 2 bits.
And 2 bits. Also features one of the funniest missions I have ever played in any video game ever. And that's saying something when you're competing with like the finger guns in Tales from the Borderlands.
Oh, I love that
which
scene.
I thought would never get a contender against it for funniest scene. But there is a mission rather early on where Arthur Morgan, who you play as, and a young man called Lenny, you go to a bar and you get freaking wasted. And the resulting antics that happen in that mission had me in absolute hysterics. So thumbs up to Red Dead Redemption 2. It also has a very in-depth multiplayer mode that I did dabble in one night when I made Clifford McGill, which just sounds like a perfect old man out in the wilderness. Rockstar Games, they do have the magic touch, and this is
definitely.
not going to be the last time we hear about them on this list.
Well, no, because they're up next again at number 4 with 97.01%. Grand Theft Auto 5, which was on the PlayStation 3 in 2013.
This is another game like The Last of Us that did have remasters, did have versions on the PS3 era and the Xbox 360.
Totally.
And then also came out on the Xbox One and the PS4. We have just taken it at the highest peak of any of those 4 versions.
Yes.
And that is this one, 97.01, but 97% average review score.
Yep.
That is impressive.
These games always sell well. Regardless of whether you play them to just be stupid in the kind of sandbox kind of environment that allows you, or you enjoy the actual story that is in there. There is something enjoyable for everybody in these games. I think one of the funniest things I've ever seen out of any of these, I don't know if it's specifically Grand Theft Auto 5, but just seeing people do drunk walks on like... is it not the high wires, but like...
On top of cranes, I believe.
Yes, cranes and things like that, where they have very little wiggle room trying to get them across a straight line, and really funny, stupid videos.
Just like real life, but with less pain.
At least, if you do stupid stuff like that in a digital sense, it's okay. And I think that's what a lot of mentality is when people play this game is, I would not do this in real life. I will do all this stupid stuff in a video game, and there's always people who look at it and be like, oh my goodness, there's so much horrible stuff that it lets you do.
Of course.
But you could say that about a lot of video games, really. It's always, I think, a little bit cathartic to have a release where you can just be completely stupid and have fun and be silly with your friends that way.
I did play Grand Theft Auto 5 on the Xbox 360. It is a game series that as the series pushes more boundaries, I find that I enjoy it less and less as time goes on. I mean, young Brendo and Grand Theft Auto 3, oh boy, that was my favourite game ever. And I've played pretty much everything since then, but the returns are becoming diminished in that series. I don't just enjoy playing video games. I love the whole industry, and I like to see how developers enhance their series gameplay-wise, what sort of new techniques they use, what new physics engines, what sort of improvements they add to a formula and what they take away to enhance the experience. And Grand Theft Auto 5 is a damn good game, mechanically, functionally, and, all the drug swearing violence aside, this game is incredible structurally. And I've always enjoyed doing the stupid, boring, everyday stuff like yoga, like golf. I don't care about shooting people and stealing their money and stealing their cars. If I can just have a nice game of ping pong, that's all I care about, okay?
It's funny how so many big games like that have like a ton of mini games in them as well, which can help break up the monotony of some of the other missions if you kind of get sick of that. So, and sometimes some people love big games. You think of how many people spend hours playing Gwent in The Witcher over everything else.
Now, it is crazy how much people do spend, not just time-wise, but money-wise, on Grand Theft Auto Online, which is bundled in with this.
Yeah.
You can buy in-game currency packs that cost $230. And why wouldn't you, I guess? But it is constantly at the best-selling DLC packs of all time. So Grand Theft Auto is a game that had a hundreds of millions of dollars budget and made it back in the first week.
Wow.
So that may be a bit of exaggeration, but it is one of the best-selling games of all time, and with the microtransactions included, it's going to make a lot more money, so there will be a Grand Theft Auto 6. We know that for a fact.
Oh, it's a definite.
But the fact is, Rockstar can do no wrong as well. Another developer that constantly hits home runs after home runs after home runs. And that's not a baseball minigame. That is just Grand Theft Auto 5. Which introduced us to such great characters as Trevor.
Oi.
Yeah, that's the exact reaction everyone has when they see Trevor. He's fun, and he's unpredictable, and he's violent, and, oh, what's he doing now? Oh, no, Trevor. No, no, Trevor.
The kind of person that is fun in a video game, but not in real life.
Oh, boy, no.
Yeah.
No, no, no. If we're going to change some gears right now, Rockstar, violence, and blood and guts, and all sorts of criminal activities.
Controversy with prostitutes in games.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, let's flip it completely to the other side and go family friendly.
Because Nintendo, if there is a developer that makes top quality first party games,
Yes.
Nintendo know what their audience is, know what their audience wants, and knows how to hit those targets.
In at number 3 at 97.33%. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch 2017. Probably one of the biggest reasons why the Nintendo Switch also did so well, like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Now, we had not had an open world Zelda game of this magnitude with the possibility to be portable as well.
Mm-hmm.
Explore on your train ride to work. Explore while you're waiting at the doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Explore on your TV if you want to, because you can just plug it back in, and that's the wonder of the Switch.
Yes. And I think it surprised so many people with just how much fun they had exploring this open world.
Mm-hmm.
So many things were interactive and a little challenging, but surfaces, if you could see them, there could be a way to climb up them. And not all open worlds kind of allow for that. Some of them kind of have hidden walls or will just send you to your death if you try to go that way. So it's kind of gratifying to have an open world that allows you, if you think you've got the skill to do it, to allow you to try to tackle it.
Yeah, unlike most open worlds where it's basically a flat land with a couple of little peaks and valleys, verticality
Yes.
in this game is dramatically more than most.
Yes.
You have falls that feel like they go for kilometers, and as you said, if you can see a wall, if you have the stamina, you can get up it. If you have the tools, you can get up there. And the fact that we have a fully immersive physics engine, you can freeze time, you can whack a boulder with like a giant hammer 8 times, hop on the boulder and hang on to it, time unfreezes, and that boulder goes flying, and you are holding onto it like a flea on the back of a dog, and who knows where you're going to end up? I've seen some amazing things on YouTube videos.
I like that boulder. That's a nice
That's a
boulder.
nice boulder. This is another game that I really did enjoy. I had a few disagreements with the way they did certain things in it, but overall, again, fundamentally, game design-wise, this game is undeniably good.
Yes.
It is truly an artistic splendor to look at. Draw distance-wise, I'm amazed you can see things as far as you can see them with an open-world map that big. And I don't think people are used to the fact that a Legend of Zelda game you can spend 300 hours in and not see everything there is to see.
Or you can jump straight to the boss fight if you're feeling like you want to.
If you're up for it, or if you're like me and accidentally walked into it and didn't expect it to end right then and there, there's the boss. Fight him. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a pretty good game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so good, it's going to be basically the first ever Zelda that's getting a super direct sequel. Like Breath of the Wild 2.
Yes.
There hasn't been any Legend of Zelda something 2 yet.
Yeah. Speaking of number 2, we are at number 2, the second best game of this decade, according to GameRankings.com, with 97.35%. No surprise, Mario Galaxy 2.
Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Oh, apologies for the super.
Let's not sell
Let's not
Mario
forget the
short.
Because it's Super Mario, it's not just plain boring plumber Mario.
Nintendo Wii
Yes.
enters in. That's how many consoles Nintendo has made this decade.
Yes, 3 different ones.
In the span of 10 years, we have had the Wii, we have had the Wii U, which...
And the interesting thing is, though, too, with Super Mario Galaxy, that was considered innovative. Everyone's like, oh, where are they going to go next? How can they do anything else with Mario? They've done everything. And then number 2, upped the ante again.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's probably because they included a lot more Yoshi, which, of course, is going to make people happy.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Now, to be honest, I have a vendetta against the Super Mario Galaxy series.
Oh, really?
Because its whole concept is that you are Mario.
Well, yes.
You are in a galaxy.
Yes.
And there are all little small planetoids that you jump from one to another. And you might do, a minute or two on this planetoid, and then you launch off to another one. And they're spherical, and you can run all the way around them.
Yep.
It's innovative. The Super Mario Galaxy series is innovative.
Yes.
Except Sonic Adventure 2 did it first with the Mad Space level, which didn't quite work as smoothly as Super Mario Galaxy, but they did it first, and nobody recognises that fact except for the few people who fly the Sonic flag against Mario's evil reign.
Honey.
However, Super Mario Galaxy 2, hot diggity dog, what a platformer. Mm-hmm. And as you said, every time they make a mainline Mario game, they add a new little twist.
Yep.
We think it's never going to be as good as the last thing. Why bother?
And
it's incredible.
Yep.
And control-wise, the Wii has probably one of the worst controllers for playing actual real games.
Yeah, for precision.
And yet it is used superbly for Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Well, you'd think so, given that it's a first-party Nintendo game and not a third-party that's trying to adapt it to Nintendo on top of everything else.
Absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Super Mario Galaxy 2.
All right.
I want to play that again now. What have you done to me?
It's so easy
This was a mistake.
I think it's time to reveal number 1, the best video game of the decade, according to GameRankings.com. I feel like that's really important to mention.
This isn't our preference,
No.
to be honest. I'm sure we'd put a few games above some of these.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has different tastes.
Yes.
But if you take average critical review scores, this is the highest rated game of the past 10 years, according to GameRankings.com.
And no surprise, it's another Nintendo game with 97.42%. Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch.
There is less than 0.5% between the top 5 spots, basically. That shows you how tight this race is.
Yeah.
But, hey,
And
number
they're all
one,
Nintendo.
number one is number one.
Uh-huh.
Super Mario Odyssey.
Mm.
Look, they've just done Super Mario Galaxy 2. How can Nintendo beat this?
Well, they did. And now we're sitting in the same spot. We're like, oh, how are they going to beat Odyssey?
If they made Odyssey 2 and released it this week, I'd buy it.
I'm sure you-
without a doubt.
Everyone would.
Super Mario Odyssey, you want to rate a game based off their ability compared to their vision. How well do they execute the plans that they wanted to have for this game? That's how I think people should review games. Not comparing it directly to anything else, but as did they do what they set out to do? And with Super Mario Odyssey, they did what they set out to do. The gimmick this time, you're not in planetoids. You're not with a water jet pack on your back like in Super Mario Sunshine. You can just throw your hat at pretty much anything and play as that, whether it be a enemy, a Goomba, a spider, a car, a T-Rex,
dinosaur.
anything. And my goodness me, even just the little bit of story that's in this game takes you for quite a ride.
Yes, I think Nintendo has gotten a little meta with their humour in the last few years. They're a bit more self-aware and happy to take even potshots at themselves, which is quite refreshing. Mm-hmm. So I have enjoyed seeing that side of Nintendo. I think especially because they are more aware that, yes, they've got kids that play their games, but predominantly it's adults that were kids that have grown up with these games now that are still playing. So they're catering for both.
Yeah.
And you can really see that shift in some of the direction that they're taking, and also in the fact that just with the Switch in general, that they have allowed so many other, frankly, more mature titles onto what was considered, the family-friendly brand. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no surprise that Nintendo has clean sweep the top 3 spots of the decade.
And we can't say they don't deserve it. They are all delicious games.
Yes.
Fantastic. Mario Odyssey has so many cute, little, adorable, wonderful touches.
Yes.
There's 2D pixelated coins on a wall. And you're like, how the heck do I get those? I'm jumping at them. They do nothing. You go into a pipe that's attached to that wall, and 2D Mario is in the wall. And you play 2D Mario to collect a few things. That is cool.
Yep.
New Donk City that's not a mistake. New Donk City is probably the single highlight of this game, where you have a New York City style scenery, which culminates with an elevator ride up to the top of a skyscraper where you have fireworks going off, a full live musical performance singing Be My Superstar, and as far as just staring at a game in awe at how great it is all coming together, Mario Odyssey has several of those moments. My only criticism is the boss fights with like the rabbit people are not as interesting as previous Mario games. I love a good boss fight, and they're not very interesting character-wise. But apart from that, I can't fault Mario Odyssey at all. I think more people should play Mario Odyssey. I think you should play Mario Odyssey. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you should play Mario Odyssey. I think I should play Mario Odyssey. So I'm going to go play Mario Odyssey.
How many of these games on this list have it made you want to go and replay?
Well, I've played all of them.
Yep.
I'm quite happy with that. It makes me feel good if I've played a game of the year or the top 10 games of the decade.
Yep.
Makes me feel pretty good with my variety of interests.
Yes.
But I am very susceptible to replaying or wanting to replay things.
Now, before we get to a special like bonus category that I have, what would you add, like, of your personal list out of all the games this decade? What is a personal, maybe not necessarily the best technically or rated, but like what has been one of your top video games of this decade?
God of War, I think, will be in my top games of all time forever. I love good stories. I love good characters. This game, from start to finish, has both non-stop. And you factor in excellent combat and some good puzzles and good crafting and experience and everything else. Top-notch. And it, unfortunately, it didn't quite peak over the 95+% average review score that was required. But, I mean, I'm just in love with Sony's exclusives in the past few years.
Dawn.
There's so many good ones that they have just basically locked down. And that whole array of titles, like you said, Horizon, Spider-Man, God of War, we've got The Last of Us 2 just around the corner. Woo! I love it. I love what they're doing.
Yep.
And because I buy every console, I have no problem with exclusives, to be honest. I think it's good business. What about yourself?
Oh, I thought long and hard about this. There are so many games I want to mention, but for the sake of time, I'm going to mention a series that has actually started at the beginning of this decade and has been one of my ongoing favorites for many reasons. Can you guess what it is? Dragon Age! Surprise! Who saw that coming? Nobody. But it did. It started at the beginning of this decade and has gone through. And while there is definitely some flaws throughout the series, it is definitely a personal favorite of mine and one that I have played and replayed to death. So, yeah, it's been a pretty fabulous decade. But before we get to our future gaming goals, let's quickly look back at the flops of this decade. So I'm just going to rattle some of these names off and I want to get your reaction to them. So when I say Duke Nukem Forever.
Duke Nukem Forever was in development forever. And when it finally surfaced...
It should have stayed in development forever.
It should have stayed in the 90s when it was first announced.
Yes, and the developers didn't take too kindly to be being told off for basically being... stuck in the 90s.
It was a different time.
Yeah. What about Command & Conquer in 2010? Very beginning of this decade when they remade that. We haven't really seen a remake of it since, except for maybe that really crappy mobile version.
People want more of the same with certain series. This is one of them. They redid their entire gameplay aspect and we just want to build bases and build armies and send them at each other.
Yep.
Not just spawn things.
They tried to
Mistake
change the
after
formula,
mistake.
and when you've got something that's tried and true, that can be the biggest mistake you make. BioWare. Assassin's Creed Unity.
The complete opposite.
Yes.
Sometimes you have a series that you keep doing the same things with,
But
and
also
it's just
you rush it and
not
it gets
good.
buggy. That was
Very
a big issue
buggy.
as well. That was bad. But I'm glad that they seem to have bounced back a little bit, and that is a series that has had some rejuvenation. So good
Yes,
to-
take
on
a
them.
break for a few years.
Uh-huh.
Alter the formula a little bit where it needs it. If it's a bit stale,
Yeah,
I have no objections.
I loved Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
No Man's Sky, which flopped hard. They did not keep all their promises. It has recovered, though.
Thank goodness.
Lucky them.
Just because you have a bad launch does not mean you are doomed to failure. We talked a lot about those sort of games.
Yes.
And, No Man's Sky was disastrous at launch.
Really, really was. But at least it's learned, and hopefully other series that are like it can learn from their mistakes. Crackdown 3.
Oh.
It makes me sad because I do love Terry.
I said how good Nintendo's first-party games have been, Sony's exclusives. Microsoft didn't have many, and then they had Crackdown 3 to put all their hopes and dreams on, and...
Man, it looked like it belonged in the last decade. The graphics were just terrible. The connectivity, so many factors just went really, really wrong with Crackdown 3. It's such a shame.
So bad.
One of my most heartbreaking moments of this decade, Mass Effect Andromeda. Oh my goodness. Now, we were overseas when it launched, so I couldn't play it for a good month.
I forgot you were overseas during this one's
Yes.
launch. Yep.
And then the reviews started coming out, and I'm like, oh my goodness, honey, this sucks. Everyone is like saying this is the worst game, like that it's terrible. And thankfully, when we got back, like obviously we bought it because I love Mass Effect. But all these patches, like gigabytes of patches, had to be downloaded before we could play. So thankfully, we didn't have to put up with all the terrible broken graphics, the travel time that you have going to each planet. You could skip that now. Like they had fixed quite a few of those big mistakes. Not everything was fixable, obviously, but thankfully we didn't have that same sour taste that so many other poor fans had to experience
Yeah.
on launch.
Mm-hmm.
Like those dead eyes.
Well, there's nothing more disappointing than when you are excited for a new entry in your favourite series and it nosedives so bad. Thankfully, I had very low expectations for Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, so I didn't get to experience that disappointment
At
this
least the
time around.
animation was okay.
I love the animation. Do not like the game.
And I think for me, the hardest part was hearing that the reason that Andromeda suffered so badly was because they had moved all their best developers onto Anthem and were just leaving Andromeda to sink, basically. And so I'm like, well, Anthem better be really good.
It was not.
It was not, and I think it is still really struggling. I don't know if they've abandoned it or if they're going to try to rebuild it like No Man's Sky was. Time will tell. But as it stands for this year, it's probably this year's biggest gaming failure.
Yes.
I think a lot of other people would agree with that. Heartbreaking as it is to say. What about Metal Gear Survive?
No, that was just a fever dream I had. That game was not actually made, right?
We can dare to dream.
Now that we've got rid of that annoying Kojima, we can make millions of dollars with the Metal Gear franchise. Oh, why isn't anyone buying our game that we made?
Coupled with obviously the news of how they treated Kojima kind of coming out before that game launched, as well as it being a pile of garbage.
Yes, hot garbage.
Yes. Terrible, terrible stuff. Oh my goodness, just burn all the copies. Turn them into frisbees or coasters. That's all they're good for. But yeah, probably one of the biggest flops of this decade. Hopefully can be rescued like No Man's Sky. Fallout 76.
A bad idea to begin with.
Yeah.
They announced Fallout 76. We were excited for Fallout 76 before we knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
An online-only multiplayer, everything that happens to every console's best titles. They decide to make an online version exclusively, and it's never as good. It's never as good.
And try to fill it with microtransactions and create special storage boxes which then delete the content that gets put in it. On top of that, special editions that get sold where they were promised canvas bags but then get sent nylon cheap bags instead at the last second. Some pretty poor decision making from those at Bethesda, which is, hopefully things that they're going to learn from come this new decade.
Please.
Yeah.
Please learn.
Please, please, please. I'm just hoping that this coming decade doesn't spell the death. I mean, it might have been having a slow death this decade anyway, but I'm just fingers crossed that BioWare doesn't shut down for good. I'm so terrified that that's going to happen to them.
Well, at least the talent will go elsewhere. You can keep tabs on them.
Maybe they can come to Summerfall Studios here in Melbourne because David Gator, the head writer from Dragon Age, has a studio here making a musical video game, guys. Just saying. Things to look forward to.
Things to look forward to. 2020 will not suck. Hopefully. Anyway, let us actually look to the future. Let's look to our future gaming goals.
After this.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/thegaminglovers.
Well, it is that time again, the tail end of our episode where we talk every week about what our objectives are, what our achievements should be, and what trophies we'll get. It's future tense gaming goals.
Yeah.
I, personally, do want to beat Greedfall. It's still going to be my main target.
It better be.
And I better be close to the end because
I think you really are now.
you promised me that I was, and I can't keep disappointing my fans.
You did do some of those side quests in a slightly different order to me, and that's what threw me off.
Okay. I'll forgive you.
Okay.
But I'm going to be targeting Greedfall with everything I have. It's hours to Christmas. If there's anything under my tree that I want to play day one, I would like to have a empty plate to do so. And so Greedfall is going to be hit hard. That is my primary and basically only main gaming goal for myself. Now you, however, you already have the empty plate. A few too many days early. What are you going to do to fill the time between now and Christmas Day? In particular, just in case you get something.
I'm thinking Stardew Valley now that the patch has come to PlayStation. Yeah.
So your options were The Outer Worlds and Jedi Fallen Order. And out of nowhere, who wins the race? Stardew Valley. A good choice, though.
I do love it. I want to play that, but that's a game I can play just for like drips and drabs. I am still trying to decide between The Outer Worlds as my main like story game or Jedi Fallen Order. And I can't quite make up my mind yet, so I might put it to a poll and get some feedback as far as which one I should play first.
Make it a quick short-term poll because we need the results by the end of this recording. No, I'm just kidding. You make the poll. Whatever wins, you can play. I did try to help narrow it down. I looked at howlongtobeat.com. They're about the same length. I looked at gamerankings.com to get the average review scores, and it doesn't exist anymore. So that's not helpful. But Metacritic did have one higher than the other. I don't know if I should tell you.
I'm pretty sure The Outer Worlds is rated higher.
Yes,
it was nominated for way more awards, so I'm basing it off that.
Okay.
But that said, I love me some Star Wars, and it's been a while since we've had a really good Star Wars game. So given that we have come off the back of just seeing Rise of Skywalker, I am in that headspace. But that said, The Outer Worlds is still spacey. So I don't know. I'm so torn. Ugh. There's too many good games to play. What a problem to have.
It'd be disastrous if you got more presents for Christmas too, because I've been there, trust me. You think you've got it all planned out, and then suddenly a gift you don't expect with a game you don't expect, and you're like, oh, I forgot about this one. Now what am I going to play? I don't know. Too many options.
So aside from Greedfall, is there any kind of side projects that you want to play? Maybe something on the portable?
Yeah, my Vita is definitely going to get more of a spin during the...
With Yeast?
With Yeast. Christmas Day, there is a bit of downtime in the afternoon when everyone gets all lethargic and sleepy.
That's nap time, thank you very much.
That will be Vita time. So Yeast, Memories of Salsida will be getting a little bit of a session then. And apart from that, I think we're done. One more episode to go for this year.
Wow.
The Smoochies.
Yes.
Our second annual Game Awards, the Gaming Lovers Smoochies.
And as we take back a look at the year that was, both in gaming as well as our personal podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Look forward to that. I'll get my chapstick ready. I want well-lubricated mouth for this.
Maybe we can bring in some special guests, peoples and stories that we've had featured on the podcast this past year as well. Like the good brother.
That's a lot of promises.
We'll see. We're spending a lot of time with family. Let's just bring along the recording equipment to Christmas and be like, surprise! No?
No.
No.
Too much hard work. Your family, I mean.
Oh.
Just kidding. We all love each other. It's all good. Thumbs up.
Okay then, mister.
Just playing around a little bit.
You better be.
They give me presents, so I have to stay in their good books.
They listen to this too, so.
Enjoy your end of year break, everyone. We'll be back in 7 days with another episode.
The last one for the year.
Until then.
Bye, Nara.
And a Merry Merry Chowski to you too.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.